All right, we are still in Unit 1. We're still in Chapter 5. There's a lot of stuff to go over here. We just started in the last video right at the end talking about quartiles. We did z-scores in the last video. Now we're focusing on the quartiles leading into some box and whisker plots. And here's your data set, right? So we're going to plug this stuff in, and we're going to show you how you can get all your answers basically using the calculator. So we're going to find the median, right? And you can probably just look at this and find the median. We don't need to do it on the calculator. But you arrange them in low to high. So start by saying you are allowed to use a calculator on the AP exam. The whole thing. So I'm not going to hammer home how to do a lot of this stuff by hand. The things I am going to show you that you need to know definitely by hand are some of these formulas, because they are going to ask you to manipulate them. So anyway, let's just plug this in on the calculator. I press stat. After I press stat, I'm going to press edit, right? Remember, do not delete your list, all right? So you go up, you press clear, enter, and then fill in what we got. So press stat, highlight calc. After you plug this all in, right, you plug it all in on your table, you go back to stat, you press the arrow key over to calc, and then we're talking about one variable statistics. We hit it. Our stats are in list 1. We go down to calculate it, and when we do, we have our list, right? We have our sample mean, we have our sample standard deviation, our population standard deviation, and yes, they are a little different. We have the number of items that were in your set, so you can double check that you did that right by looking at that. You have the median as well. So here's the min. We can keep scrolling down. There's the median is 12.5. So you can also find the Q1 is right there, right? First quartile is at 4.5. Third quartile, if you keep scrolling down, there's that, 24.5. Have that one there. So we have all the information that we need. If I said to keep the same numbers but add 39 to it, let's just see what happens. Go back into your list. That's all you got to do. Go back, edit. All right, we just go the whole way down and we just add 39 to the bottom. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. And we press stat again, and we highlight the arrow key over to calc. We do one variable stat again, right? We make sure it's in that list 1. I go down to calculate, and when I do, notice that that one extra item switched the mean for me, all right, as we were doing this. Did switch those, if you remember. They were around 12 and 11, respectively. The median, though, quartile 1 did not change. And I don't think the median changed. All right, but if you look, notice that by adding one number, quartile 1 was not changed. And the reason why it wasn't changed is it's the whole way up here. It didn't affect that number at all, right? The median was as well, but Q3, right, but not the first 25% of the data. So I guess the median was changed from what we had before. The third quartile, which we'll see, was changed. All right, but some of the stuff does get changed. It says the median was as well. All right. Notice by adding 39, Q1 was not changed at all. The median was as well, Q3, but not the first 25% of the data. The first 25% of the data was unchanged. Next up, let's talk about percentiles. Okay, what is a percent? Well, what does 91% mean? We think of it as a 91 out of 100 when we look at these percentiles, but a percentile is everything separated into 100ths. That's basically what a percentile is. It's how your grading works, for example. Remember your SAT, all right? If you took that, the score tells you that you scored in the 50th percentile or the 70th percentile or the 99th percentile. What exactly does that mean when you're reading it, right? Well, if you scored in the 50th percentile, does that mean you only scored a 50%? No, not at all. That's not what it means. Doesn't mean you scored a 50%. All right, a percentile separates our data into 100 parts. All right, unlike a quartile, that basically separates it into 4 parts. This separates it into 100 parts. If I cut a loaf of bread into 4 pieces, again, how many cuts did I make? I only made 3. We went over that a little earlier when we were talking about this before. So if I separate my data into 100 parts, I would only need 99 cuts in order to get all 100 parts. So can you ever score in the 99th percentile? Yeah, you can. All right, that's that one cut, right? That one right before. Because there is one group or 1% above it, it's okay. There has to be something above and below when you're doing this. Can we ever score in the 100th percentile? Right? Can we ever score in the 100th percentile? And the answer is no. All right? There are no groups above it. All right? So it's not going to work. Therefore, the highest percentile we can have is the 99th percentile. That's the highest you can go. All right? A percentile actually compares you to everyone else that took the test, is basically what it does. It doesn't tell you how many questions you got right or how many questions you got wrong. For example, if you scored in the 50th percentile, that means you scored better than 50% of the people that took the test. That's what it means. Out of everyone who ever took that test that year, you scored better than half of them. And a percentile rank is the number of data values less than 100 times the total number of data values times 100. That's all it is. All right, it's kind of how you do grades in general. So take a look at an example. Let's say you score an 87 out of 100 on a test, right? You have a 87%. That's pretty self-explanatory. Now let's compare our test and create our percentile. You find out that there are 39 people in the class that scored less than you. 39 people scored less than you in the class. We also know that there are 54 people in the class. So what we're saying here is 39 people scored less than you, all right, out of 54 times 100. So you scored better than 72.2%. So you are in the 72nd percentile. You scored better than 72% of them. How could I find out how many did better than me? Yeah, can you do that? Sure. Just be careful. We don't subtract them. Because if we subtract it, all right, 54 minus 39 is 15, right? If you do, you are double counting yourself in that because, again, you did better than that. Does it make sense? Technically, if 39 people did worse than you, you are the 40th person, right, who took the test. You follow me? 39 people did worse than you, you are the next person. You are 40th on that list. So it's actually 15 minus 40, so it is 14%. So a score of 87 out of 100 is a percentile of 72%. All right, so about 14% did better than you. Or 14 of them did, not percent. 14 people did better than you. Can you tell me what the 25th percentile is, right? The 25th percentile. Well, what else could that be called? All right, because these are the kind of questions that they try to work in with you guys to make sure you really know what we're talking about. And the 25th percentile, right? The 25th percentile is also basically the first quartile, right? The first quarter. The 50th percentile is also basically the median. The 75th percentile is also basically called the third quartile. The next topic is something called the interquartile range that we're going to talk about. They abbreviate it as the IQR, the interquartile range. The interquartile range is basically your difference between the first and the third quartile. That's all it is, between the first and the third quartiles. That's all you're doing, subtracting them. It represents the middle 50% of your data, okay? How many of you basically remember those box and whisker plots that you basically did in pre-algebra and probably algebra 1, dabbled in it, and maybe even a little bit in algebra 2, okay? Box and whisker plots. It's a picture of what we call a 5-number summary of your data. Included in that is your min and your max, the lowest and the highest point, your quartiles, and your median right smack dab in the middle. And basically, this is what it would look like. Your min, your max, right? They basically call those your whiskers. The box itself, this is the low, this is the high, and the median is the middle. The box represents the middle 50% of your data, the interquartile range. The median line does move depending on the middle of the box, all right? It's actually neat to see where the middle is closer to, as in which quartile, all right? It helps us see where more of the data is located. All right. Take a look at another example. Let's say I gave you the following data. All right. Again, we're going to worry about figuring out how to use the calculators to do a lot of this stuff, but you can do it by hand if you want. Organize the data from low to high. It says find the 5-number summary and graph a box and whisker plot. Right? Well, again, you are allowed to use your graphing calculator on the entire exam, so let's use it. So let's plug this data in. We press Stat, All right, we go to edit, so press edit. We plug in our data. Again, make sure you clear that out. If it was there before, make sure you clear it out. Don't press delete. Press stat and arrow over to highlight, right? We press stat again, we arrow over to highlight the calc button, and we want the one variable stat. So we press enter. All of our stuff is in list 1, so make sure you have list 1 in there. We press calculate, all right? And we have everything. Now I need everything down here because I'm looking for my min, my max, and my quartiles. It's all listed. Your 5-number summary is listed all right in a row. So it's this easy. By using the calculator, we can easily find the min, max, quartile 1, the median, quartile 3. It's all there. But how do we create a box and whisker plot with the calculator, right? How do I take all that data and put it together? Press second and y equals. Got to make sure your stat plot's on. Mine's currently off. So you turn it on by clicking on. All right, here's your box and whisker plots down here. Then highlight the box and whisker plot. Make sure it's in list 1. So box and whisker plot, all the data was in list 1. If you press graph, it should show up. However, we want to zoom and we want to make it look like stats. Zoom stats is what I'm looking for. That's number 9. Zoom stats the whole way down there. And there's your box and whisker plot. You can just click on each one. It will tell you what each value happens to be. Okay? So when you're looking at this, you can press trace and you can see what each value happens to be. There's the median at 9, right? There's the first quartile at 5. There's the lowest value at 1. Okay, so you get the idea of what it seems to look like. The next question is, how do we determine any outliers? Because that's key to this. How do I know if something is an outlier or not? All right, you'll use this a ton. Okay, so do we just look at the data? And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stop you right here because this is going to take maybe a little longer than like 1 minute to do, so I don't want to race through it. So when we come back, we're going to look at figuring out how can I tell from my data whether or not I have an outlier. What if it's a legitimate outlier or not? All right, we'll look at that when we come back.